and welcome back. This is American Perspective with Patriot Mom 007, and today we are blessed and honored. Actually, she made time for us at kind of the last minute. Gina Godbehere, and she is running for county attorney in Arizona, Maricopa County. And so we're going to delve into what that entails, which is the equivalent of the DA in other LA or Chicago. They call him the DA, district attorney. So we'll hear more about the job later, but I want to first mention I do not know Gina, met her a few events ago, and the reason I asked her on is I'm a manicurist for 30 years by trade, and her sister-in-law was my client for, 12 years or something, quite a while. I watched her kids grow up through high school, and they were a great family, very, very wonderful people. And so when I met you and found out it was you who was running, because I know your Stan is your brother, right?
Yes.
So Stan Godbehere, so I knew the name. I thought, wow, she's probably got some really interesting stuff to say. And I knew that when I talked to you, whatever you told me was going to be true, so I didn't have to worry about filtering what was real or not, because I know your sister-in-law for so many years. So that's why I had her on. So thank you for trusting to come on, because you don't know me.
Thank you, and just don't ask me secrets about my brother.
Yeah, no, and I know your brother, but very vaguely, but just the family in general is just a good family, just overall, as families go. So you have been in the Valley your whole life.
Yes.
Born and raised, so we don't hear that every day. A lot of transplants running for things these days. So I suspect that your dedication to making sure things are good for not just everyone you serve, but your own immediate family, who are mostly here probably, is of high importance.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I'm a fourth generation Arizona native, so I come from a very, very large family, and so I've always wanted to not just protect the community, but protect it for my family and keep this the same great state that we've always had from the beginning of my family first coming here in the early 1800s, pre-statehood.
Wow.
So my great-great-great-grandmother, you talk about 4 generations, she came out here by wagon train after the Civil War, and that was where I had that great article in the Arizona Republic in 1941, where they talked about her walking out here by wagon train, and because she was a widow with a 6-month-old child, she had to walk alongside the wagon train with all the men, and she would come. They would eventually originally go to the Yavapai area out at Williamson Valley, and she would become one of the first women in Arizona to register a cattle brand in the territory of Arizona. Okay. And then my family would eventually move over to the Buckeye area. We were one of the founding families of Buckeye.
So as voting rules go, my takeaway from that as a voter who's learning of all these candidates this cycle is the ones who live here the longest probably have the most to lose if things don't run properly and best for the majority, versus somebody maybe coming in from California or Kentucky or wherever they're going to come from and trying to make a home here. Obviously they might be good too, but not as invested for generations as Gina is. So you have a family here.
Yes.
And how many kids do you have?
I have 2 daughters, and they are 16 and 18.
Fun ages.
Yeah. And my oldest is about ready to start college in a couple weeks. So we're trying to, in the midst of trying to get ready for the primary, we're trying to make sure she has everything for her dorm room.
Wow.
And she's all ready to go. So it's an exciting time for her, and I'm so proud of everything that she's doing and what her future has in store for her.
Which college is she attending?
That was kind of a fun one. She's going to the U of A, but my entire family are Sun Devils.
Oh, wow.
And my father actually was a walk-on for a short period of time under Frank Cush. So we were maroon and gold for our whole life.
So it's kind of nice to represent all around then.
It is, but she's going to be the first one in my entire large family.
She's a trailblazer too.
That is going to the U of A. So we have officially become a house divided.
Like great-great-grandma, she's a trailblazer.
She is.
Of her generation. She's bucking the system without the wagon train. So that's amazing. What do the girls think about you running for the position? Because this is a lot of hours. Like, you guys are out all over town, late nights, I'm sure, getting home. Your 16-year-old, she still needs you, I'm sure. I have a 17-year-old. He kind of barely needs me, but he's a boy and she's a girl. So there's always that difference still. So how do the girls handle it with your schedule?
I think that the good news is I get to see them in the mornings, and they're at that age where they're so busy working all the time that they're busy with their own lives. They think it's cool, and all I get is, Mom, you don't have enough signs in surprise. Mom, we were driving over here. So I want to say, well, can you start carrying signs along and just put them up? Or you think you need them? So I think that they're kind of following it, but they're still young, and
so they're behind you 100%.
Yes,
obviously. So do they think they have aspirations themselves of following in Mom's footsteps in criminal justice area, law enforcement, or maybe politics? Are they looking at political science or anything of that nature?
They would say absolutely not, but I could tell you they love to debate, they love to argue, and that there is some of that in them.
So maybe an attorney in the family one day?
They'll say no, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So Mom knows best, so she's probably more accurate. We should check back in a few years and see what's going on, because that would be interesting. So you have been working as a Goodyear, in the city of Goodyear, as a prosecutor for quite a while, or how many years have you been there?
Actually, I was with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for 25 years. I was a gang rope homicide attorney, and then I moved over to management, and I always tried cases in addition to that. So in management, I have supervised and trained over 200 prosecutors that are working throughout Maricopa County. I've trained teams of homicide attorneys, and I thought I would retire with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. It was the first job I ever applied for, the only place I applied. And then the city of Goodyear recruited me to be their head prosecutor. So I moved over there.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I moved over there for just
to get recruited.
I'm blessed. They were a great organization, and they asked me to lead their department, and it was just too good of an opportunity, not just to be able to be that voice and to be able to go to the legislature and be able to argue against statutes that I disagreed with. Because a lot of times when you were in the county attorney's office, but you're not the elected, you're stuck with whatever position the office is taking. And I thought in many cases they were decisions I disagreed with, and I would love the opportunity at the city of Goodyear where they gave me that freedom to be able to contact my legislators and be able to
be
voice
proactive
concerns. Yes.
Okay, so that's important, being proactive with law enforcement, after all, with what's happening these days. Sitting around watching it happen and talking about it, and then nobody doing anything about it. Like, I don't know, Eric Adams off the top of my head. That's definitely not the way to go. So that already sounds good. I mean, I did cast my vote. So since I already cast it, I'm saying I voted for Gina. So I hope you listen to the rest of this interview, because what you're going to hear is going to help you make a decision on Tuesday, August 2nd for our primary. And that's why I'm having her in here today if you haven't voted already. So you have some more information with you when you go to the polls. So when you were with Maricopa County, you started, I want to talk about the program you started for the youth. Tell us about that program you started.
Well, there's a couple programs I started. So for like 25 years, I've always tried to do more than just my job. And so I was asked to be on the team to develop the very first juvenile drug court. That was 26 years ago in the state of Arizona. Then, because I had juvenile background, when I moved over to the adult system, there were all these juveniles in the adult system because the voters passed an initiative called Do Adult Crime, Serve Adult Time. And so we had all these juveniles in the adult system. So I started the Juvenile Transfer Offender Program. It's still in existence today. I was on that team to implement it. And I put together a trial notebook to train prosecutors that's used throughout Maricopa County. I also was active training at all the police academies for officers how to testify, how to file reports, but I wanted every prosecutor also to know why officers do what they do when they approach a situation so they can explain it to the jury. And I'm particularly talking about use of force, because every time an officer, a defendant is charged with an ag assault or resisting arrest against a police officer, in court, every single defense, 98% of the time, it's excessive force, police misconduct, every single one. So if an officer did the right thing, we have to be able to defend them in court and let the jury decide. And I'll give you just a quick example about that, because people may not realize, the defense tries to limit everything. So the officer's responding to a domestic violence, they don't know what's going on.
Right.
They want to limit it, and it's just officer goes to arrest the defendant, and they forget about why they're there, what happened, state of mind is, what their
exactly.
They want to limit all this, and I remember the worst case scenario was a case where the officers were called to a Blockbuster. It's dated because there's no Blockbusters around anymore.
No, we had them though. I used to go
But
there
it was
Friday night.
they're responding to a call for service for help of a suspicious person outside.
Blockbuster, for those of you who are just born recently, was a video store that you would go to check out. It was like the Netflix box, only they were big VHS tapes, and we used to get them from Blockbuster, so that's what she's referring to.
That was crazy.
It's
like
store,
a red
There's a store. They used to hold up. Yeah, there's problems at Blockbuster.
Yeah, a red box. It's a big red box, but like a
store.
Walgreens.
Exactly.
But they didn't want to go outside, and it was. So this is how long this has been happening, where the police officer was called because somebody's looking through the cars, acting suspicious. The people were afraid. They respond to that scene. The guy runs and tries to pull out a knife in his packet, and the defense moves to suppress all of the suspicious activity, the knife, everything's prejudicial.
What they were responding to
Yes.
physically.
So then they stand up and they say, black man standing on a corner, 4 officers jump him. And I'm like, wait a second, that's not where the story started. So these are the things that we have to deal with, these officers have to deal with, and we're constantly fighting to be able to send the right message in court. So that became important to me, to make sure those officers, if they're attacked on the street, they're not going to get attacked on my watch in the courtroom. And I'm going to make sure all my attorneys were trained to stand up and protect them, because there's nothing more frustrating to have this lie being said and you can't defend yourself in court.
Right, because they're not allowing you to speak on it. So I assume that most of, actually I read this, you could just confirm it, law enforcement in the state of Arizona is behind you, and you must have a lot of internal endorsements from agencies that you've known and worked with for many years, it sounds like. So that must feel really good and important to you voting. If all the people who protect you endorse somebody, you might want to pay attention, because they might know who the good people are, because they're protecting us, remember?
Yeah.
So I like that. I like to hear that, because people don't know, and you're obviously pro-law enforcement, and you want to help our officers versus what's been happening around the nation. So just tell the audience how you plan on righting the ship that's been harpooned, and getting our officers back on the track that they were supposed to be on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just blessed. I have the support of 90% of all law enforcement throughout Maricopa County and the state. Everything from Phoenix to the ASCOPs to the Highway Patrol to Peoria to Glendale, Chandler, Mesa, everywhere. And the Sheriff's Department, they've worked with me for years. They know my passion. They know that I'm not afraid to stand up and protect the ones who are protecting us 24/7. There's been all this dangerous rhetoric across the country with the riots and everything else that has gone on, and very few people have actually spoken up to say something. And to me, that's frustrating, because if our law enforcement is not safe, our community isn't safe.
And where do you stand when you get into office? Where do you stand on the riots if they bring them back to Arizona? How can you help put a stop to it, or work with agencies to keep it from blowing up in our faces?
Everybody has a First Amendment right of free speech to protest, but when they are lighting trees on fire and committing criminal damage and looting, that is not tolerated. That is not your First Amendment free speech, and there was a lot of that happened in the city of Phoenix and Scottsdale and elsewhere, and people forget during that time. For those of us who watched on TV, we didn't forget. But sometimes people forget that we were in the middle of a pandemic. COVID just came out. We didn't know how deadly or dangerous it was going to be. We were on lockdowns. People were supposed to be wearing masks. We were trying to protect our families. There was no vaccine.
right?
And you had
Which is kind of why we were told to wear masks, because there was no other form of protection. That was the only reason.
So you had a time, law enforcement at that point were working double, triple shifts. They were afraid for their families,
Yes.
concerned for their own safety.
Right.
Nobody was wearing masks. Nobody was keeping with the 6-foot rule.
Right.
And that just added anxiety and stress. And I remember there were shows where law enforcement was not even staying with their family because they were
Right. I
concerned.
remember they were isolating from them, and firemen and other service people, nurses and doctors, they were sacrificing to keep us safe while they kept their families safe. So how would Arizona, do we have the laws in place, or is it something you need to change as AG with the process of changing things? Do we have laws in place that would protect Arizona from these extremist situations that obviously come up more than normal?
We do, and there's certain...
And would you implement the laws and the agencies to follow through on arresting, prosecuting?
We do, and there's obstruction of justice, and there's certain laws that we could have absolutely enforced, and we could have handled better in those situations that I would do going forward. But when I was talking about that stress is... Months later, we play armchair quarterback, and we decide not to go forward on any of those cases. And law enforcement felt like they were thrown under the bus.
And they were.
They were not supportive. And so that's the biggest change is law enforcement asked me to run. I'm stepping in because not just in those cases, but in a lot of resisting arrest and aggravated assault cases, they're being turned down. They're being furthered to the city, and they're just not being charged.
I saw a lot of cases that are just sitting there and in limbo. I don't know what you call it, on somebody's desk, and just not being addressed. Is that what it is? So the people who committed the crimes are just hanging out, doing their thing until their file comes up on. Is that what's happening?
Well, there's a 20% vacancy rate at the county attorney's office. So in an office of 1,000, you're missing 200 critical staff, and that's because morale is so low there. They're having trouble. Even now, they've lost, in the last month, they've lost at least 3 20-year employees that I know of, and you can't keep losing that experience, and we're not replacing them that quickly. So there's a real concern with the county attorney's office that they don't have the staff, so that instead of filing charges, they're turning down record numbers, they're sending them to the city. When you downgrade felonies and you send them to the city, cities don't have the ability to have supervised probation, so these individuals are not monitored in our community. So we have a lot of issues and problems, and when you have a demoralized police force and they have a county attorney who's not filing charges, who's either turning them down or forwarding them, furthering them, or sending them to the city, they're even more frustrated because they figure what's the point?
And that's what's happening here in Arizona, as well as everywhere around the United States right now. So you have a plan to overcome that. The officers trust you. What's the first step? I'm just curious, actually. What's the first step in implementing something pro-police? Like, you're in office, and next week you got everything. Everything's put together. You're ready to roll. What do you do first? Like, what's the first thing you tackle? Is it street officers and getting a program in place to reverse this situation we just discussed?
The first, I'm going to have to tackle it 2 ways. The first one is I'm going to have to meet with my staff. You're only as good as the staff that works under you. So I've got to motivate, bring up, and tap that talent that's been untapped at that office and give people hope. Hope to hang on, that we're going to right the ship, we're going to do this together, and I need all of their ideas to become more efficient going forward. That's number one. And then the same time I'm going to tackle is I'm going to reinstate what was called community-based prosecution. That was very successful under the Bill Montgomery administration. And what that did is we focused on the prolific offenders in our community. We worked in partnership with all of our law enforcement officers, because they know who the problem people are in their community.
They keep picking up over and over.
They do. So if we're working with the cities, we're working with the municipal prosecutors, we're working with the police department, we're going to target that 2%, 1% that is causing the bulk of the problems in the city.
Repeat offenders that we hear about, who've been arrested 24, 48, 100 times all around our nation, and then they kill somebody, or 3 people, or 20 people with an AR or something. So that's important. So if you're just tuning in now, Gina Godbehere is running for county attorney in Maricopa County. Our primary is August 2nd, and this is why we're looking to vote for her, and that's why I'm trying to highlight her skill, because I know since you work with so many agencies in the past, and it's a man's world, let's just be real, especially in law enforcement. I was in law enforcement, just a disclosure, for 3 years. I volunteered as a uniformed cadet in Oregon in high school from 16 to 19, okay? It was going to be my career. But working with a lot of male officers at 16 to 19 was maybe too eye-opening, and then I was like, probably not, maybe not for me. But I love the industry. I love our law enforcement. Even when they give me a ticket, I still thank them, actually, because that's the easy part of their job. Not necessarily, but sometimes. So I like that you're really police officer centric, and that you have a good plan. And I feel like since you've managed so many agencies across the board in different processes, the people rally under you. It seems, especially if somebody poached you, people must listen to you, and you must have a way of dealing with the men, who aren't always easy to deal with just because they're men. I can say that. And so are you getting feedback already from some of the people you're working with that maybe you would be working with in that new capacity, to what they're looking forward to? Have you heard from, I'm just curious if you've heard from anybody about that.
I am hearing from a lot of people inside the organization, but they're trying to keep quiet, because obviously it's not, it's a difficult situation, because my opponent is certainly currently running the organization. So it's more like in the closet support. Okay. But they're hopeful because they know we need change. We have been going the same direction in this criminal justice system for 20 years. And though I like to equate it to a train, and those tracks were laid a long, long time ago, and nobody stopped to say, are we going in the right direction still?
Right.
And are we even providing good services? And if they did, the answer would be no to both of those questions. We need to just look in our community. When you talked about mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness is out of control right now.
Out of control.
And they're all interrelated. And so when I look at it, I've been a homicide prosecutor, a gang violent crime prosecutor. Right. I'm going to hold the violent criminals accountable. But I also know we have to deal with the broken windows, and we have to deal with all of the thefts that are happening, the people that are committing thefts to support their drug habit. We got to stop enabling drug users. We got to start holding those individuals accountable too, and we have to shift to deal with that. Otherwise, our homeless population, all these other issues are going to continue to grow. And if you look back in homicides alone, City of Phoenix, I think I had the stats of 2 weeks ago, there was about 125. 75% of them are people under the influence of drugs. We have a drug problem in our community. So from a prosecutor standpoint, we have to be looking at doing things better through education and prevention, through treatment programs early on, but also and through our reentry and assimilation programs. So there's so many exciting opportunities, and there's a lot of people who have great ideas, and people are all reaching out saying, I'm so glad you're finally talking about these issues instead of ignoring it and just triaging the problem. We need to start solving and breaking down silos and working together to address these issues. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
It's true.
And I'm going to tell you what I've seen to become so frustrated working like in a homicide case. You can almost pinpoint a moment somebody went right instead of went left, and you have all of this harm in our community with the next of kin and the families, and it makes you wonder, if we could have intervened earlier and we could have dealt with this, could we have prevented some of these tragedies? And that's the exciting part that I want to think bigger and look bigger at, because in our criminal justice system currently, I could tell you what's so frustrating is drugs are just as easy to get in jails and prisons as it is on the street.
Yeah, they trade them in prison too.
And help is just as hard to get.
That's a problem. Can we do anything about that in the prisons? Like, do you have any sway over that when you're in the county attorney? I mean, I don't mean directly, but with people in that area that you would work with in the prison system. I mean, knowing that that's a problem. Is there a way to start tackling that for real?
There is. I have a voice, and I have a loud voice, and I manage the crimes that occur in DOC. So when somebody is assaulted or somebody is murdered, they become my victim, and I'm dealing with their family.
And I know you do for victims' rights too. You're a big victims advocate, which a lot of Well, these days, not a lot. There's a few highlighted DAs across the nation that are anti-victim. And I've been in the court system. I had an advocate, actually, is one of the best people I ever met in the entire court system. And I can personally attest, unfortunately, that the system is not very designed to help the victim. I mean, there are factors of it that do, but overall, it's horrific. That's why I'm in college. I'm a criminal justice major right now. So, because I know the problems in there.